Good evening. It is Friday, March the 10th, about 7:45 p.m. This is Shay Gibson with iKitesurf and Wind Alert, bringing you a wind forecast for the Cocoa Beach area. This goes out to the CKA Collegiate Kiteboarding Association 2017 Surf and Freestyle Regional Championships going on down that way. It's also listed on their Facebook page, the CKA Kiteboarding, and their events page for this weekend. This is all part of the Beach and Boards Fest sponsored by Ron John Kiteboarding. So we wish everybody the best down there in this weekend's event. So what we need to find out is what the wind is going to be. It looks like it's going to be kind of a tricky weekend. Tomorrow looks a little bit more straightforward with some northeast or northeast winds, but as we get into Sunday, things get a little bit tricky, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. But for right now, here's the surface map. And what we have is a very weak cold front draped to the north with a little bit of troughing down below it, stretching all the way down into the across towards the Miami and northern Keys. And what we have up here is we have a giant ridge of high pressure working its way down from Canada. There is a large area of moisture working its way down across the country as well, which is going to have some effects in the Carolinas. But as far as the winds go for the Cocoa Beach area, it's looking that this boundary will get pushed to the south down below Cocoa Beach and possibly down across, I'd say Miami, down in that area. And so what's going to happen is we have this northeast wedge set up that's building down behind this boundary here. And as time goes on and this gets pushed further to the south, this is when that faucet's going to turn on for the wind at some point overnight tonight. It may come as an initial burst, pretty strong burst, and then kind of settle down. And then as time goes on, we may see those winds sort of become a nice, steady, moderate build for tomorrow. And if we look at the GFS modeling, we can kind of get a better idea of this. This is for the continental United States. And we put this into motion as we get into tomorrow. We can see that high pressure very well removed way up here to the north. It does have an extensive ridge all the way down into the southeast in Florida. But one problem with that is that with the central high pressure being way up here, the gradient may not be as favorable for being stronger down to the south. Normally we would have like Ohio Valley high up here, which would really be driving this northeast winds down across the area and kicking up the speeds up to 20 knots and up. But with it being so far removed over here across the northern tier of the United States, this northeast or north-northeast gradient may not be quite as strong as your typical northeast setup. So here's the NAM 4-kilometer model. This is sort of one that I like to go with, especially in our models. It's depicted as the NAM 5K. If you look at the Quick Look Plus, any of those other models, those are blended, and the NAM 5K is put in there, but if you look at the straight 5K, you might get a better picture of what the wind may do and add a few knots to it, because the models typically don't catch the exact gradient of the north-northeast or northeast wedge as they work down into the southern states. So here we go. As we go into time, this is for tonight. As we work into tomorrow, we see those winds start to turn on, and what these are little wind barbs. Each one of these little flagstaffs, the long tick is 10 knots, the short tick is 5 knots. The greens and the yellows represent the areas of a stronger gradient. So we can see that wedge working down into Florida. So here we are at hour 12. Let me back up a little bit. So we go into Saturday morning, and here we are at hour 12. And then we work into tomorrow morning. By the time the sun comes up, we see that the north-northeast flow has made it down there, and then we see the gradient sort of building in there by 4 or 5 in the morning, and then it sort of leans a little bit more out to the northeast by 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, and then it just sort of becomes steady. The wind barbs show about a 15-knot gradient offshore. That could make it onshore. We're hoping to see something like that, because I know that for these events we needed probably anywhere from 14 to 18 knots at the very least in order to have a successful event. But you see that the northeast gradient pretty much sticks around through the day. This hour up here is about 4 hours behind, or I'm sorry, 4 hours ahead, because it's universal time. So we're looking at about 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and it stays pretty steady, but it does tend to weaken as the day goes on. So we'll look at that in the iKitesurf models in just a little bit, but we want to also check for rain as well. It looks like as we go in time into tomorrow morning, the NAM 4 does tend to exaggerate precipitation a little bit, but I'm showing it because there is a possibility that we may see a few showers push into the area by tomorrow afternoon. It's not a definite, it's just because there's a cold front that'll be back down to the south, and some of that troughing and overhead clouding may produce a couple of stray showers or two. Pretty unlikely. I'm not really expecting any rain for tomorrow, but as we get into Sunday, we see that rain chance increase as low pressure tries to develop off the coastline. And that's the other thing I wanted to talk about in the NAM 4 is as we go through into Sunday, we see the wind shift. So we get a little bit of an easterly gradient overnight Saturday night, and then as we get up Sunday morning, we see that the wind switched to the southeast. Well, that area of moisture I was talking about is draping down to the Carolinas. We also have a low coming across, a weak low coming across the Gulf of Mexico, and then transferring out here to the Atlantic. So this is going to be the tricky component right here is this low that develops sometime in the morning or midday Sunday, and it switches winds from the southeast, and then you'll see what happens to them as that low tracks up to the northeast at hour 45 here. And then we get that northerly flow coming back down again. So that's after that band of rain or that batch of moisture and low pressure associated with off the coastal Carolina area moves off to the northeast. Then we start to see that northerly wind fill back in, but it's going to be a switch up of winds for Sunday as a result of that. So let's go ahead and take a look at iKitesurf and zoom into the area. It looks like the Cocoa Beach Pier sensor is still down because they are renovating the pier and we had to remove the sensor, so we do apologize about that. We could get an ocean model output, but we'll go with the 520 slick, the Banana River slick, which I think the contest is going to be happening here. And we'll go ahead and open up the details because I want to look at the model output. So I'm going to select all on this, and you can do this from desktop from your iKitesurf as well. And as we go in time, we see tonight that the models are pretty much all in agreement with this northerly wind lining up. Sometime about 4 o'clock in the morning, we see this straight northerly wind lining up with that initial pulse I was talking about. That's the gradient tightening real fast, and then it sort of backs down a little bit. And as we go through the day, the winds lean a little bit more northeast, and then they sort of steady out. So the models, one thing the models don't do is they usually don't catch what's called cool air advection over these warmer waters. So the water temperature is about 72, 73 degrees, maybe even 74 or 5 in the Banana River. On the ocean side, you're looking at maybe about 72. I'll look at the sea surface temperatures just a second to try to verify that. But either way, you get this different kind of north-northeast or northeast wind, and the models tend to go a little bit shy. So I'm going to call for tomorrow to be about 14 to 18 knots. Any more than that would be bonus. I think we may trend downwards as we get into the early to mid-afternoon times. We may drop down to 12 to 16 knots. But I think in the morning time will be some of the stronger winds as they're pulsing down to that area. We may get a nice little bump around midday as long as there's some sunshine to help with that activity, and then you'll see the wind slowly kind of fade out by mid to late afternoon. But one thing is good is that the models are in agreement with this direction of wind, and that means usually that the gradient is tightened, especially along the backside of that cold front. So as we go into Sunday, this is where things get really tricky. So we see that southeast wind kind of coming up in the morning ahead of that energy, and this is really tricky. So none of this is for sure yet until we get a better idea or a better profile of what's going to happen for Sunday morning as far as that area of low pressure. But you see the models are kind of all over the place on speeds. I mean, the yield on this is about 10 knots between the lowest and the highest, but they're pretty much all in agreement with the south-southeast wind. So you may have something in this area of 11 to 15 knots, but then they fall. The winds steadily fade as that low pretty much develops to the north, and then as the low moves out of the area, then we get that northerly wind back in. So we may see this northeast wind rush back in behind it a little bit sooner than later in the afternoon. So I mean, we're talking maybe 2, 3 o'clock. The timing's going to be very tricky, but that may be the best time is in the morning with that south-southeast wind. If you can get some elevated winds up to 11, 15 knots, and you're able to fly the bigger kites, especially on the ocean side. And then as we get later in the afternoon on that secondary surge, that post-frontal surge, we may see that northeast wind kick back in. So that one's going to be tricky, but I'll try to come up with another update tomorrow night and see what it looks like then. The temperatures for the area expected for Saturday and Sunday right around 71 degrees for highs, 70 degrees for lows. A little bit on the chilly side, that's just due to that northerly wind. And then if we look at the sea surface temperatures, things have been warming up bit by bit. The closest sensor we have for that is the Trident Pier, just south of Cape Canaveral. The water temperature there is 71.4 degrees, so a little bit cool along the shelf waters there of Florida. I would guesstimate inside the Banana River area, Indian River area, that would be a few degrees warmer, so maybe 74, 75 degrees. So if the air temperature is a few degrees below that, you may have a stronger local gradient from the temperature difference there, and we'll hope for that. But until next time, thanks for watching, and I'll try to get back on tomorrow night.